Tonight, the Rockford Performing Arts community pays tribute to the renowned local director, actor, and theater teacher, Jim Crow.
Crow died Wednesday at the age of 78, and as WIFR's Maggie Polsing shares, his influence will be remembered for generations to come.
Jim Crow spent his life cultivating and growing the Rockford theater community.
The joy he brought to people as an actor, he was just so brilliantly funny in his own right. He was just a good friend.
With a career spanning nearly 50 years, Crow touched the lives of thousands of performers. As a theater teacher in Rockford Public Schools, many of his former students say his fervor for the arts fueled theirs.
The impact that a teacher can have on someone's life, he really put me on this path that turned into a professional career in entertainment.
He has taught people, and he's taught their children, and he's even taught their children, which is an amazing legacy that he has left.
From 1977 to 1980, Crow directed the shows here at Starlight Theater, helping launch the passion and careers for many Rockford natives like Jody Benson.
He actually cast me as Maria in West Side Story, and it was the first principal role I'd had in my life. I mean, it's amazing the impact that one director, one teacher, one professor can make in the trajectory of your life. He has made that impact not just in my life, but in many people's lives.
The seeds he planted in his performers bloomed into Broadway and entertainment talents like Sharon Sachs, Maren Mazey, Robert Greenblatt, and Dan Webster. But those who knew him best say his greatest achievement was his family.
His family was always a priority to him, always a priority. But everyone that he's ever been with changes them for good.
I think that people will continue talking about Jim Crow for as long as they're around, because he was such an influential person on their lives.
He's such a legend here in Rockford, and it's hard to imagine Rockford without Jim Crow.
In Rockford, Maggie Polsing, WIFR News.
Hard to measure his influence for sure in this community. And a memorial service to honor Crow will be held at a later date. Details are still forthcoming.
Family, friends, and all who were touched by his remarkable life and work say they are grateful to have known him.
And we'll hear from his son tonight at 10.